Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Let's Talk Toku. I'm your host, Squall Charlson, and we are here with another fun, entertaining guest. We have Cameron, my buddy Cameron. What's up, dude?
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. What are we going to talk about today? What are you thinking?
I think before we jump into it, I had a couple ideas. Explain who you are to everybody who is watching at home that may not, be familiar with you or anything that you've done in,
Yeah, I'm Cameron Lee. I am a museum art curator by trade and a toku nerd by night. I created an original indie toku character called Godpunk that has an upcoming comic and some crossover stuff, maybe. And I run a podcast called Big Bad Beetlebros, where we talk about Beetleborgs, a show that is often forgotten.
Oh man, Beetleborgs, that's crazy. What's Godpunk?
It's kind of a combination of Indiana Jones, Lara Croft, and Metal Heroes and Kamen Rider. It's kind of my persona as a toku character and a lover of history and archaeology.
I've seen that it's a comic, right? Is it ever going to have any plans for like live action or anything else beyond that?
We're working on it. COVID's kind of interrupted, plans for really anything, but especially production and stuff. So we've got the suit. We've actually got a couple suits in production, and we've shot like a test tension scene. It's just one buddy and me shooting stuff. So hopefully, things clear up and it feels safer to travel and get a crew together.
Definitely. That'd be something really cool to see. We need more independent toku, I've always said. And definitely taking it from comic to live action is a very, fun thing. We had another guest that I guess he's going to be on the show. Sorry, you guys are seeing how the sausage is made. But my friend Alejandro, he is doing his 2 series. He's doing Time Strikers and Red Visor Go. And he's done a little bit of dabbling into the live action aspect of that.
Yep, I've seen his suit.
There's a lot out there. Like there's the Jamingers. There is, Ivan's one that he does. There is Matthews he was on an episode where he did, talked about the immortal Red Fox. So it's always good to, have another addition into that. I don't know, it'd be so cool to have a local hero, an independent hero. What we were going to talk about today, I know we've already talked about it a little bit with, like independent toku and kind of, other things. So I was going to kind of leave it up to you. Do you have any ideas of anything else you want to talk about on this episode?
I've got the podcast going. I might as well talk about Beetleborgs. Seems pretty relevant.
Well, I guess we can talk about Beetleborgs. It's from the 90s, right?
Yeah, like 96 to like 98, 88 episodes.
All right.
Aired during Turbo and Zeo.
I'm going to make a confession. I've never actually seen the Big Bad Beetleborgs. How did you find where I live? Welcome back, everybody, to Let's Talk Toku. I'm here now with Cameron, who... How did you find out where I live?
You really want me to answer that?
No, please don't. Yeah. Anyway, we are talking about Beetleborgs today. The metal heroes turned into VR troopers, into Beetleborgs, and just kind of encompassing that.
Yep.
I don't know. Let's start it off. So where did this show start? Like, how did it happen? Can you kind of give us like a little bit of the origin?
Yeah. So Big Bad Beetleborgs and Beetleborgs Metallics for the second season. Like VR Troopers came from a Metal Heroes season, the last Metal Heroes season, Juku B-Fighter, and then B-Fighter Kabuto for season 2. And what kind of started to happen with the later Saban shows, so you had VR Troopers came out after Power Rangers, and kind of the slew of Saban franchises started coming out, and
see Japanese show, turned it into American property.
Right. Yeah.
I gotcha.
Formula from Power Rangers, rinse and repeat. And it worked for the time being. And then they got through 2 seasons of VR Troopers. They actually switched the Metalder footage to a different Metal Heroes season after season 2. Because again, you just run out of footage eventually. And unlike Sentai, it doesn't keep going.
Well, that was kind of the thing that they ran into with Mighty Morphin, is they ran out of footage. You know, they could only do so much with, the White Ranger and the cast, and that's why when season 3 happened, and, they could use the Alien Ranger footage, they went ham.
Yep. Yeah, and you get that amazing, the Zoo 2 footage where they tried to kind of piece it together a little bit, and it worked. And they kind of ended up having to do that with VR Troopers, parsing together new Metal Heroes seasons. And when time came to start looking for a season 3 of VR Troopers, the next Metal Heroes season was Juku B Fighter, which is the Beetleborgs suits that we're all used to. They're,
well, you're used to.
I'm used to. They're brightly colored, red, blue, green, and very obviously Beetle themed, drastically different from like Metalder and Spielbahn and the Space Sheriff shows. So somewhere along the lines, they decided they didn't want to just throw that into VR Troopers and continue on. So they said, we'll do something new. And that's where the iteration started for Beetleborgs. At what point Shuki Levy and Haim Saban decided not just to do their typical teenagers get superpowers and then they use Japanese footage, and they said, we'll throw in the Universal Monsters and Blue Elvis. I don't know where that conversation happened, but they kind of started leaning into something drastically different than had been done before, and it stuck, and it's, for those of us who remember it, I think it's kind of seared into our brain a little bit because it's so weird.
Okay, now that you mentioned that, that does sound familiar. Like, there was that Beetleborgs that had the monsters, like Dracula, the Mummy.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So that's
the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think during the next commercial break we should go watch episode 1
for sure.
Just so I'm a little bit up to speed, because I looked all this up, and it strikes me as similar to, like, you have a show like Sentai, and it's coming over to America, it's getting turned into something completely new. Like with Metal Hero, I feel like Juku B Fighter had this sort of theme that they gave back, and gave them 3 very colorful heroes that would make really good footage. And then with Beetleborgs, and they saw where everything was going, they're like, all right, now let's see them try to adapt this, and they had like the giant mascots.
Yeah, it's great. And if you watch Juku B Fighter, their kind of like mentor figure, I think his name is Guru, is like literally a giant anthropomorphic beetle with like I think it's Sage Guru, and he's literally got like a old man wizard beard and very cartoony face. He's very mascot looking, and it's not that it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked for like VR Troopers.
Right.
They definitely could have thrown it in with Flabber and the Hillhurst Monsters. It would have fit perfectly.
Right.
But yeah, it veered so drastically from what other Metal Hero seasons had done, and I think it threw Saban for a little bit of a loop, so they just threw everybody else for a bigger loop.
You throw me for a loop, I'll get you right back on this one. Oh man, I really hope that there is some group, some company out there in the future that does make Metal Hero more accessible, because I've only seen a handful of like the earlier seasons, like Gavon. Unfortunately, like that's something that I really want to watch and be more fluent in.
Yeah.
It's just I haven't been able to find anywhere, and I haven't really had time to seek that out. But oh man, those final seasons of Metal Hero, that's
yeah, they really kind of I don't know all of the behind the scenes on what was happening with Metal Hero. I know it was always kind of a slightly more mature themed show than Sentai and Rider and even like Ultraman and stuff. It had a different audience, I think. And then they went with B Fighter, and I think they tried to even out a little bit more with Sentai, like you said, you know, getting the colored hero suits and the more clear battle mechs.
Because this is around the 90s when Kamen Rider wasn't necessarily a thing other than like the cinema movies. And so, they could, I could foresee them with Sentai being, very Sentai and Ultraman kind of being very low tier for like, younger ages, and then Kamen Rider kind of being a little more mature, and then Metal Heroes kind of stepping into and around that area. But now without Kamen Rider, it can kind of settle into a more childlike sort of role.
For sure. Yeah. And it was 1995 when Jukubi Fighter came out.
Okay,
so
cool.
Yeah, kind of
That's
lacking on Rider a little bit in that era.
Quick turnaround. I forget that, like Rangers used to do that and, would just take literally the next season, because now they take, I don't know, like 40 years, and then they're like, all right, we'll do this one now.
Right. Yeah. Well, because now they have like a 5-year backlog that they can choose from,
right.
And which is smart from that perspective, I guess. If you're
true,
gives you more options.
I mean, like with Beast Morphers taking from Go Busters, like that was something that threw everyone for a loop. But it's like Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, was like produced almost 10 years. Well, no, not 10 years. Maybe like 7 years.
It was a while
after it aired in Japan. Like it was like the first one to actually be shot in HD. So at least the footage, like preservation, was really good, really nice. But I don't know, anything's possible. Like we could even see like a Metal Hero series taken off of, the older series from then today.
Yeah. Well, and even Beast Morphers throwing in using a handful of Metal Heroes suits.
That's right. Like even Ninja Steel did like Jara, and like they had, Gavan, what was his name? It was like
it was something weird.
No, what am I thinking?
Captain Chaku.
Captain Chaku, yeah. That's it. Nice. All right, well, I think we're going to take a quick little break here. We're going to go see that episode, and we will be right back with some more Let's Talk Toku.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everybody, to Let's Talk Toku. So during the break, we went and watched not the first, but the first 2 episodes of Big Bad Beetleborgs, because it was a 2-parter.
Yep.
And I have I feel like a fever dream of knowing what the Beetleborgs was in my brain somewhere as a kid. I never actually partook in the watching of this show, but I have no idea what I really just watched with that first episode.
It's they throw a lot at you, and the first episode doesn't even have the Beetleborgs in it except for a fantasy scene.
Yeah,
they don't get their powers yet, and then the second episode they actually get their powers, and then the villains are introduced. But it has these crazy goosebump vibes, and
it's like definitely like there are shows that were made around that time, like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, which are like predominantly these like Canadian kid spooky shows that this one somehow has, even though it's like a Saban production. I don't know if they hired some of the same people that did that, or
it could be one of those either convergent evolution thinking, where they just both of those ideas were going around in circles. I mean, people in kids TV all talk, so maybe it was all kind of coming together.
The Midnight Society fought Japanese monsters and they were friends with Dracula. Write that down, Steve. That's a good one.
There's a hardcore following to Beetle. I say hardcore. There's as much of a following to Beetleborgs as there is Power Rangers. Is just proportionally smaller because there was less Beetleborgs to begin with.
Right.
So you have those 2 seasons that they took from B Fighter, and the people who remember it, even if they didn't they didn't watch it all. If you show somebody a picture of Flabber, Big Blue, Elvis Genie,
Jay Leno,
something's gonna click in the back of their brain. And they're going to go, I remember seeing that, or I saw merch of that. They had a doll of Flabber that you pressed a button on the back and it spoke like a plush doll. People remember things like that just a little bit. And then you show them an episode and the hamster gets back on the wheel and it's just yes, okay, I remember that.
Completes a circuit.
What was that?
I have no idea. I don't know, you have to give a lot of credit to the team and the production for, you look at Power Rangers and it's this the show that has never been seen before, the show that has never been, on the air like that, with these teenagers that turn into superheroes and they're fighting, like Japanese monsters, and like it's just stylistically so crazy. Mm-hmm. And you look at all these different things they've tried to tweak over the seasons and over the years to kind of continue to keep that influence over, the viewership. And if you think about it like that, Beetleborgs makes a little more sense of like, let's throw not just one or two different things. Let's throw like 40 different things in here, and hopefully something will stick. You got like, what were they called? The Hillhurst monsters, because of the Hillhurst mansion. Mm-hmm. Like you got like this wide variety of all these different, like monsters, and you got kids turning into the heroes, which was a thing that they did right before Power Rangers. Am I getting that right?
So the kids getting the powers, that Beetleborgs did a handful of things first that I think people kind of, just because of the popularity and like the way that memories work, we attribute to Power Rangers first. But so kids getting their powers and transforming into the full-sized Japanese heroes in the suits. Growing up 2 feet. Yeah. Everyone kind of thinks, Justin from Turbo, Blake Foster's character. That's the first time that was done in Rangers. It had been done before in Sentai with like Die Ranger, and but the first time they brought it over with Saban was Justin. Well, Beetleborgs came out a year before Turbo. The first season of Beetleborgs came out, and kind of like,
I got you there.
Yeah, they kind of, that's where that sprouted first. Hey, I'm here all week. And another thing that they kind of brought in before Power Rangers that we're kind of used to seeing in Ranger seasons now is civilian powers.
Oh, yeah.
So we see it in the first episode a little bit, where Roland gets speed powers and Drew gets brain power, telekinesis.
He just drops water on rich kids for fun.
And Joe gets super strength. And eventually the White Blaster Borg, Josh, gets invisibility. So, and that comes back. I mean, Dino Thunder Black, Tommy Oliver had invisibility. Like, those kind of things come back in Rangers, a decade and a half later or so, and Beetleborgs did it first. What Beetleborgs does, I think, better than some of the Sentais even, a lot of Sentai and Rider seasons have, like, this girl or this character who's super strong, and that's a thing, but it's only a thing when plot really needs it to be and they forget. And you'll get, like, halfway through the season, and you're like, couldn't she, like, bend steel with her bare hands? And it never comes up. And Beetleborgs has it throughout the whole show.
Oh, wow.
The power leveling is weird in Toku anyway, and it's not. It's doesn't really
Dragon
work.
Ball Z levels.
Yeah, it's not cohesive, and it's not really meant to be. It's a plot device.
Right.
So what she can and can't do is definitely up to debate depending on what director you have.
Right.
But it's at least consistent through first and second season.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that. I really wish that there was some way that I could be a fly on the wall in some of these productions, that I could just, be buzz right there and listen to some of the, discussions that were brought up, some of the arguments, that occurred. Definitely over Beetleborgs, I feel like there was a lot of, push and shove, and someone wanted to get something in, someone didn't want to do that, and then they just decided, let's throw everything in.
Yeah, it's we actually got the chance with Big Bad Beetlebros to sit down with Gabe Torres, to Zoom call Gabe Torres because it's quarantine,
right?
And talk to him for a little while about his time directing Beetleborgs. He directed 21 episodes, 21 seasons.
Whoa.
The show's been going forever in like North Korea. You just didn't know.
Yeah, they shipped him over there.
Yeah. He directed 21 episodes throughout season 1 and 2. And we got to talk to him a little bit about that. He's got super fond memories of the show. So if you follow him on Instagram at Gabe Creates, and he's worked on a ton of other productions, but every like once a month or so he'll post a picture from behind the scenes of him on set with the house monsters or Flabber. Billy Forrester played Flabber, and like he's still friends with some of the guys that played the monsters, and he's still friends with some of the like the kid actors, and he's worked with some of the guys that were on set. Those crews kind of. It was real early in his career, so he's got it's really cool to see him have such fond memories of the show and know that, like, yeah, everybody had fun working on the set. And, you know, we talked to him about working with kids is kind of has a bad reputation, I think. It's like people are like, never work with kids and dogs. Yeah. Or kids and animals.
Yeah. Cats, am I right?
Yeah. Like, that's a thing that I think you hear with actors and, like, directors and stuff all the time. It's really hard to work with kids, and it's really hard to work with animals. And he's like, no, they were all great. Like, they have their time constraints because, you know, child actors, you can only work for so many hours, and then you have to cut down. So you have to, like, really frantically, especially with Saban production, of, you know, we're going to shoot 5 episodes in succession, or, you know, 3 episodes at a time or something like that. And having a kid who can only be on set for 5 hours or something, like, I don't know what the laws were in 96 and 7, but having kids that can only be on set for a little bit and still going, no, this was great to work with, and we treated them like adults, and they understood, they were professionals about it, and they went on set, and then they went off and did their coursework and went right back to it. And yeah,
we talked with Koichi Sakamoto a couple episodes ago, and
the legend.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's really fun. I remember he highlighted kind of how a typical production day will go, sort of the stunt wise. So for stunts, they usually do that stuff towards the afternoon if they're working in the same space, because he will come in, he'll, you know, work the morning with the drama stuff. So they'll bring in the actors in, they'll work on all the things, like, you know, like where they're turning the camera, they're reacting to something, they're interacting, they're doing something, and it's usually right before they transform. And while they're doing that, off to the side, the stunt crew is figuring out and, you know, organizing, choreographing everything. And then once they're done filming that, in between, you know, he checks out what they're doing, kind of, you know, confers with them, and then boom, they go break for lunch, they come back, and they're shooting the stunt stuff. So I can definitely see, you know, especially a show like this where they have to, you know, like maybe do a little bit of the kid stuff, do a little bit of the monster stuff. They can, you know, easily delegate those to separate sides of lunchtime.
Yeah, and it's cool to see kind of like the behind the scenes production of these kind of shows, because it's so different than your normal shows. And like, one of the big things that I think people always are curious about, especially with the older like Toku Saban shows, is like, how do you even work, and how do you direct an episode that has, you know, 5 to 15% of the footage already done? And it's,
you kick back, baby.
And it's like
already done.
So, you know, that was one of the first things we asked Gabe, was how do you even go, what's the difference in the directorial process of this? And he's like, well, the director or the editors would get the footage, cut it down, they get the B-Fighter footage, cut it down into the action bits that, you know, don't have things that aren't going to make as much sense, or don't have the Japanese actors and actresses and crew and stuff in them, and put that onto a tape and send that to the directors and the writers and stuff. And then they'll also have like basically a crate of, here's your monster of the week, here's your new toy, here's what mech's going to be in it, or whatever. In B-Fighter, it's the Beetle AVs. They're big, they're not quite mechs, but like Thunderbird vehicles almost. And then you kind of fit that around and you roll with it, and it definitely like explains some of the show. But you can see where in Beetleborgs, where they added all the monster stuff and Flabber in the Hillhurst house, and you have so much creative like freeform of, you could do an episode with all this, and at the end throw in the monster fight, and there's your Japanese footage.
Hey, sounds fun.
Yeah, and it just, you know, sounded like a really fun set to be on, and a fun challenge of, like, not only do you have, you know, these kids or teenagers you've got to fit in with this Japanese footage, but hey, you've got a haunted house filled with monsters. Go.
So I noticed you brought some things.
I did.
Yeah, it's show and tell on Let's Talk Toku. Oh wow! What the hell is that?
I'll show the smaller thing first. So if you guys have seen Beetleborgs, and like we just watched, you know, the first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
The whole gimmick of Beetleborgs is that they get their powers from the comics. Right. In universe of Beetleborgs, they're The Beetleborgs are characters in a comic book.
Right.
And my headcanon is that it's B-Fighter. It's a comic book version of B-Fighter.
Right.
And then they're pulling it out of there. So that's my headcanon. Feel free to steal it. But on set, on set, whenever you are watching, like Zoom Comics is one of their kind of HQs they hang out in. All over the set are these comics of Beetleborgs.
Is this one that was on set?
And this is one of the ones that was on set.
Whoa.
And I wish I knew specifically what episode, but there's a handful of these floating around. If you're on like eBay or anything real, often, or if you're on like our Toku sales groups on Facebook and stuff, they'll pop up. They go for a pretty penny, but there's like 7 of us that want them, and there's like a handful of like myself and 5 or 6 fans who see one of these and they'll snag it, and it's like, I know probably everyone who has one of these that has gotten one recently, because it's like, hey, we all talk to each other like, hey, did you see this one? Did you get this one listed? Oh, that's a new cover. And they're just photocopied covers pasted onto a 90s like Batman comic, because it's an easy prop to make, and they're all just sitting on shelves.
I guess,
yeah. And there were a handful of there's a handful of inner panel scenes in the show that you'll see. They had an artist who would go through, and the same guy who did the transformation paneling.
Yeah, because is that the comic every time that they do that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
They switch it around a little bit. Kind of depends on the monster of the week and stuff, but their transformation's always kind of popping out of comic panels.
Yeah.
And that same art style is always for these covers and then any internal stuff. But it was always kind of a wish of mine that they actually had made a comic for Beetleborgs, because you always see the comics around. It was like, you'd think, like, if it was done now, there'd probably be a comic that was released, or a web comic or something.
Kind of like the Power Rangers movie had Aftershock, which came out, after it, following it by the Ryan Parrott, who then started doing Go-Go, and now is working on...
Now is just killing it with every title they can throw at him.
Yeah. Guy's beast.
Yeah.
They're all pretty good on that.
Yeah.
Team.
The whole team at Boom is absolutely... If you guys ever want to throw your hand into Beetleborgs,
yes.
I mean, just...
I will sit down and watch every single episode.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Just go for it. Yeah. I'll do it. Don't tempt me.
So you tell me this is a Batman comic in there? I'm not going to open it, but is Batman?
It's a 90s, like, I'm sure they had somebody on set that they were like, go to the local comic shop and just grab every dollar bin or whatever, 95,
Different comic. Yeah, there's probably like a quarter bin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just, grab as many as you can. We'll run photocopies of this handful. I think they had, probably like 20 or so different covers that they had done. And sometimes they're specific to the monster of the week, because the gimmick is, the gimmick is that the villains...
They go and they take the new monster
out of the comic.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I could have wrote the show.
Yeah. And it's a fun kind of MacGuffin to have.
Yeah.
So you'll get some of the covers that people will find will have like a specific monster of the week on it, and that's kind of a fun... It's kind of a fun, weird thing that Beetleborgs is the only show that I know of that has this kind of a collectible cult following around it with something like this.
Now, what the hell is this giant
thing? Let's see if I can get this all on frame.
Yeah,
perfect.
Oh my goodness.
So this giant spiral bound thing I just got actually from it was shipped from Italy. I don't know how it ended up in Italy, but it was in Italy when I found it. And you've really got to search for like Beetleborg stuff. It's so
eBay.Italy. Italy.
Yeah, literally. And the inside, the first few pages are a comic recreation.
There you go. There's the
first
comic.
Episode.
Put that in there.
And it's like, it's all lettered and everything, and it's a similar art style to the stuff that was in the paneling and stuff, and just slightly different. But this is a style guide that would have been on set for the prop masters and the
basically art department.
Yeah, and any kind of advertising and stuff. So like this, we actually have like a non-blue flabber.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's just Jay Leno.
Yeah, and so they have like a bio for all of the main characters, and
wow,
some
that's
really cool
so sick
comic art for each of them. And then they'll have like your character lineup with your villains and your heroes. Ooh, there we go.
Wow.
Yeah, and so this is like my holy grail now, kind of for this show, because it's such a weird thing. I've never seen another one. I hit up Gabe Torres when I found it and was like, hey, like, does this look legitimate? Like, what do you think? And he's like, oh yeah, I remember seeing those on set. Like, they'd float around, the art department would have them, and advertising departments and stuff would have them, because it'll say like, oh, when you're when printing Stinger AV in this comic book style color, or spot color or 4-color is highly recommended. And like, it's just something you throw at somebody that's doing the packaging or something, or the paneling, and like they have this whole section is just different comic panels to have in the show.
That's so cool.
And,
yeah. There's like a lot of stuff that you'll find with like TV shows like Saban. There's I forget what their name is on Twitter, but they're basically like cataloging a lot of this like older stuff, and they get like style guides, they get all this other sorts of things. They get like it shows in their like package dimensions and like different backgrounds and how to present that and what it looks like. And even learn like PMC, they'll have walls of like all the future upcoming merch and kind of what it looks like, so everybody that's a shareholder, a stock owner with the company, has put money into this. A producer can come and look at all that and be like, oh.
TokuScans on Instagram does a bunch of this stuff with old magazines, and they've got a bunch of B-Fighter stuff. And when I snagged this, they messaged me on Instagram and was like, I saw that and you snagged it first. Like, at least it went to somebody who's gonna enjoy it. Right. And there's a handful of people around that collect like these weird behind the scenes things, and it's so cool to see kind of like the love put into this weird show that people don't talk about. And then you like, I snag this and I put a picture up on Instagram or Facebook or something for the podcast or on my personal page or whatever, and people come out of the woodwork like, oh man, that's so cool. Like, can I read the bio? Like, can you send me a picture of the bio? Can I read it? Like, what does it say about Vexor or Noxic? Or
you should scan that thing.
Put it
out there. That's like, really cool.
People just like love seeing this and reminiscing, and it's so fun to kind of like bring people together about this weird thing. And you get your Power Ranger stuff, and there's 27 or so years of things going back, and you can pull anything from it. And Super Sentai is all over the place now, and you can see it everywhere, and Kamen Rider's getting real big again. So you can see all these things, and everybody knows about it. And then you snag something from Beetleborgs or VR Troopers or Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog or something like that, which Gabe also flew out to Ireland and worked on.
Wait, he did Mystic Knights?
Yeah, so...
I think I have a toy of that.
Yeah, when they got to the end of Beetleborgs, a bunch of the crew from Saban ended up going and working in Ireland on that. Yeah! I wish I remembered any of their names, but...
doesn't say any.
Probably just has a year and made in China on the foot.
I think this was like a Burger King toy. I feel like.
It's that's another thing. Everybody has like the like a Burger King or McDonald's Toku Saban toy floating around somewhere. Like if you grew up in the 90s, you've got like a Beetle Bonder from McDonald's floating somewhere, or one of the Power Ranger movie ones.
The Lightspeed Rescue.
Yeah.
You could put the Megazord together.
Yep.
That was pretty sweet.
Yeah. Gotta love a train Zord.
So I noticed on the front cover, it's got that beetle there. Is that what inspired your creation for Godpunk? Kind of like the scare beetles?
Yeah, a little bit. So, Godpunk's my indie toku project, like we said. And I don't know, I've always liked Kamen Rider and Beetleborgs, obviously, and Metal Heroes and stuff, and kind of started just messing around with my own. I was like, I love cicadas. I don't know why. They're real prevalent in our area, like they're all over the place, and I love cicadas and the mythos behind them and all of that, and started diving into like, oh, there's never been a cicada Kamen Rider. Why isn't there? There's been dragonflies and scorpions and all sorts of things that aren't even bug related now. And why hadn't there been a cicada-themed Kamen Rider? Well, it turns out there was a cicada Beetleborg in Season 2, one of the Astral Borgs. They called him Lightning Borg. There was a lightning bug Astroborg too that was called Fireborg. Kind of flipping them around a little bit, but we'll let it fly. We got a cicada themed, and his coloring is orange and black, so I got a little inspired from that. And yeah, the like mythos around scarabs and things like that inspired heavily.
Yeah.
Going into like Godpunk's henshin device is the cicada changer, and it's a little cicada nymph.
Does it go in the
Wrist
skin
watcher.
like in the Mummy?
No.
It just crawls up into. You got to cut it out.
That's Shin Godpunk.
Okay. When it gets remade eventually, more
when it gets-
mature.
It's a cicada that crawls up his arm and then he bursts out like a shell.
It's just called God. What happened with Beetleborgs? Why is it no longer on? Like you said, Gabe Torres did Mystic Knights. Was that something that, was kind of happening at the same time? Was that something that took over?
Like most of the Saban properties that weren't Power Rangers, Power Rangers can keep going so far in perpetuity because Sentai has kept going. And now they have a backlog, like we said. They can keep going and doing that. If they had kept on with Masked Rider or something, they could keep on going with Kamen Rider, because we still have Kamen Rider. Ultraman could keep going, whatever. Metal Heroes stopped after B-Fighter Kabuto. That was the last one.
Is that when they started doing like the giant mascot creepy looking thing?
Yeah, they did.
That makes sense.
Robotac and Kabutak.
Yeah.
And they're these big robot mascot suits, and sometimes they will have like a cooler superhero transformation form, but they're all like elementary age target group. So it's a little different than your normal. I guess Power Rangers is aimed at elementary to like middle school, maybe. I
got bullied in middle school for liking Power Rangers, so maybe like
fair. So did I, but
late elementary.
Yeah, but it's Power Rangers isn't about teaching you how to read,
right?
Or share as much. Well, sometimes it kind of depends on the episode. But
yeah. The Blue Ranger has dyslexia.
What are you going to do? It's the same thing with, what caused Beetleborgs to happen, where they stopped doing your space sheriff looking suits, went into B-Fighter, and you're like, okay, VR Troopers out, Beetleborgs in, and now it's B-Fighter's done. Do we move forward? Can't. They decided not to do an adaptation of Kabutak or Robotac or any of those things, and went right into Mystic Knights of Tirnanog, which is like a Celtic knight themed
right, and that's all completely original footage too, right?
Right, yeah, it's not based on any previous made show. It still has the Toku tropes of like transformation scenes and weapons and vehicles, even though it's like nebulous medieval times. There were vehicles. It was
like Highlander for kids.
Yes, and I don't know. I love it. It's not available on Netflix or anything. It's one of those few Saban shows that didn't make the transition. But yeah, Beetleborgs like VR Troopers and like what was another? I guess like Masked Rider, because it used Black and Black RX. You ran out of footage, and they just kind of halted it right there and flew Gabe out to Ireland to start helping the production crew, because like we said, Saban's production is significantly different. There's a big learning curve to an Irish Shakespearean production crew coming in and going, oh no, you're going to shoot 3 episodes in succession with the stunt crew over here and the main cast over here, and oh, by the way, you've got to like get a costume change halfway through the show because you're going to do a hero pose. And yeah.
And they say, where's my mark? I feel really worried. Like, I don't want my water to fall on that. Yeah,
take it back off the...
Yeah. Protect those, seriously. Yeah. So, following the end of Beetleborgs, where has the show gone? Like, it obviously has a sort of cult following. It has, sort of like resurgence because now it's on Netflix, because people are able to search it, find it, fall in love with it again, get scared like I was a little bit. Like,
yeah, it feels, of course, for me. I mean, we just started a podcast about it a year ago, so for me, it feels like a renaissance, but I'm also discovering this whole like underground of fans that you don't see in your Power Ranger groups, and you don't see people doing Beetleborgs cosplays and stuff, but all of a sudden you're seeing the some of the cosplayers and the makers that 3D print Power Ranger helmets are 3D printing Beetleborg helmets.
Hey, nice.
and weapons and suit parts, and guys that do scans of Sentai magazines from the 90s are scanning B-Fighter magazines and posting them on social media. And people are doing fan art of Beetleborgs and B-Fighter and stuff. So I don't know if it's my brain looking for it more, or if it's more prolific now.
Right.
But and
You're helping lead the charge.
I know. I'll take credit for that, I guess.
After this episode goes up, we're gonna have 20 Beetleborgs fans. It's gonna increase.
You're gonna see the Google search categories for Beetleborgs. It's gonna peak
for this
just
weekend,
a little bit. Yeah, for like like a 20-minute segment of man, 100 people search for Beetleborgs right then and then never again. But yeah, there's a not an active subreddit, but there's a subreddit that myself and my co-host try to contribute to as much as possible. And there's Facebook groups all around, and people posting on Toku Twitter about it, and kind of trying to stay active with it and be like, hey, what do what's your, show off your collection of Beetleborgs toys or merch, or like I said, with the people who go and collect the props, like there's this weird little niche within a subgenre of people who are like, this is my thing. Like, everybody loves Power Rangers, everybody loves Sentai and Kamen Rider. I like Beetleborgs. This is my thing. How deep can I go down this rabbit hole? And you can't go that deep. There's just not that much out there. Some of us have found there was a advertisement put out for an Image comic, like the provider, the publisher, for Beetleborgs. It was put out back in '96, and it's just like an ad that was in a comic in the '90s, and it's Rob Liefeld art, the famous Marvel, or infamous, depending on who you ask.
Wait, is he the one that did the Captain America? Like,
yeah, that's the one,
the busty one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think he did some Deadpool and stuff too, and he did the art for it, and it's in the same style as like the style guide, like very slimmed, straight, one color, less metal bits, and there's no word of it anywhere else, and Gabe didn't have any info on it.
Man, that's crazy. That'd be so cool. That'd be like unearthing this lost hidden gem. But anyway, that is all that we have time for today's episode of Let's Talk Toku on the Big Bad Beetleborgs. Cameron, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you all on the next Is it on the style guide?